Masters of the Universe Classics fans, Scott ToyGuru Neitlich here, back with another director's commentary in the ongoing series, going figure by figure, release by release, of the Masters of the Universe Classics line from Mattel, which ran 2008 through, well, I guess 2020 this year, because Super 7's putting out the Snake Mountain, right? So I guess this is the final year, stretching 2 companies, over 200 figures, vehicles, playsets, the whole Megillah. Well, I was only there for the Mattel part and about 95% of the Mattel part, but hey, qualifies me to do director's commentary. And today we're going back to the 2000X series, one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and we're talking about, I think, my favorite original 2000X character that came out of that show, and that is the Cadian Cat Warrior, Chief Carnivus. I absolutely loved Chief Carnivus from the minute he stepped on screen. I was like, that is awesome. And no, it had nothing to do with being a fan of Thundercats. In fact, I didn't even think of Thundercats. It's funny how that's what people say now. We'll get to that later in this episode. But I don't know, his design, I was like, wow, that is just really cool. And there's like a whole tribe of cat people out there that are allies with the Masters of the Universe, and Chief Carnivus gets to be the, token hero of those. Now, this definitely came, I think, from when I was a kid. My favorite Disney movie was the Robin Hood animated movie, where Robin Hood's a fox, and Little John's a bear, and, et cetera, et cetera. Nutsy is a vulture. Actually, he's not really a main character in the Robin Hood myth, is he? You get what I'm talking about, though. It's an awesome movie, and if you've never seen it, it's on Disney Plus now. You should definitely. I mean, it holds up. It's an amazing film. It's one of Disney's greatest films. When I was a kid, I never had the Disney Channel, but if people remember back in the 80s, they used to have this thing where you'd get the Disney Channel free for a week. It was like a week preview, and Robin Hood was on, and we recorded it, and I used to watch that videotape over and over and over again. And I just found out Super 7 actually is doing action figures based on Disney characters, and they're leading off with a Robin Hood character, Prince John. I'm so excited about this. Total free plug for them. I think this is so cool. I've waited all my life for Robin Hood Disney action figures, and I'm so glad Super 7 is kind of giving them the royal treatment, no pun intended. All right, so aside from my love of action figures and my love of Robin Hood, the reason I'm talking about this Disney movie is because at the very end of the film, King Richard shows up, like he does in pretty much every Robin Hood tale ever, from, Ivanhoe on, and, just like in the live-action Prince of Thieves, where you get Sean Connery, King of England, talking in a very thick Scottish accent. Well, actually, if you're going to poke about history, they should all really be speaking French anyway, but that's a YouTube video for another time. The point is, like the end of most Robin Hood tales, you get King Richard showing up from the Crusades for the last 30 seconds of the movie, and in the Disney Robin Hood film, that character is a giant fighting lion. And when I was a kid, I mean, I know Prince John was a lion, but he didn't really have the mane. He kind of looked like a scavenger lion. This was like a real royal lion with a mane and the whole 9 yards. And I just thought this visual was awesome, and it just really stuck with me throughout my childhood. So when Chief Carnivus showed up, to me, this was kind of like seeing King Richard, the lion warrior, actually fighting. And he was fighting alongside He-Man, so that made it even cooler. So, quick history of Chief Carnivus on the show. Started off in an early episode where Adam and Teela visit the Cadians in their village, and then later on, Carnivus joins Randor's Eternian Council in order to counter Skeletor and other bad guys, where you've got all these different characters from different cultures coming together. And he represented the Cadians, of course, because he was their chief. I always thought that was cool, too, because you had a lot of kings, and, you had some. He was a chief. He wasn't a king. And I like that. I like that they kind of spread around the titles. I'm sure that's an Ian Richter or, any of the guys who worked on the show did that. But either way, I really wanted to do a figure of Chief Carnivus from day one. He was like top of my list. But I knew we couldn't do him in year one. It just wasn't right. We had to, start with some logical figures. But once we got to year 2 and the door opened up to doing 2000X figures, I definitely pushed to get him in as quickly as possible. He used the basic Beastman buck, which, was easy with new cape and new armor. etc., etc. And he even used Hero's boots, which I thought was really cool. That was something the Four Horsemen chose to do. And I really got to make a video just all about how great the Four Horsemen are and all of the things they brought to this line. It could not have been the line if it wasn't for them and the love they put into it. Anyway, regardless of that, Chief Carnivus turned out to be a great figure. I should note also in his bio where he mentioned the Cadians. Mattel was actually really concerned with that because they thought it sounded like Al-Qaeda. I don't know, I think maybe it was going to originally be the Cadians, and they changed it to Cadians in order so it didn't sound like that. Maybe that's what it was. I can't remember all my facts, but I do remember that coming up at a couple meetings, and I think Ian even told me about that. That was one of the issues. When I told him about how much I love Chief Carnivus, he's like, we had to change the name because it sounded like Al-Qaeda. Anyway, interesting story, though, is that the Cadians are not the only race of cat people in Eternia. So even though Chief Carnivus, had a big speaking role in the 2000X series, back in Filmation, there was a character, well, the most popular cat character was Katrina, who eventually actually did get a figure in the Filmation Castle, or Club Grayskull, that's what they called it, Club Grayskull line. But, I think, anytime you have a, cute girl cat character, she's going to be fodder to make an action figure of. But the point being is there was a film, actually 2 Filmation episodes, where the feline people show up, and there's, a whole race of them. There's soldiers, and there's, scheming, viziers, and there's advisors, and, the whole 9 yards. You basically have Filmation really going to town, creating all of these cat people. And of course, the head of the cat people was King Paw, who was kind of like this, chubby lion cat-ish guy. He looked actually more human than cat, I always thought. Point being is, in addition to the bio, I did a video where I talk about how we use the print ads to try to also get information across, because we didn't have a cartoon or a comic or a movie. And one of the things I snuck into the print ad for Chief Carnivus was a reference to Saz. I said he had the sword of Saz. And that was because in the Filmation show, the cat people, Saz was like, I guess their god or their deity. They always said like, by Saz, or by the power of Saz. So I thought this would be a great nod to the cat people in the Filmation series. And I think I was surprised that nobody kind of picked it up. I thought that was going to be one of those things people got right away. So obviously we have to talk about Thundercats if we're going to talk about a cat character. And no, I actually toyed with the idea in the bio of talking about Carnivus as the Cadian people coming from like another planet, crash landing on Eternia and making, a joke about, Earth 2 or, etc. But I was like, I'm not going to cross that line because that just opens up a whole, can of worms, if you will. But there is one Thundercat reference that is clear with Carnivus if you look at his sword. So one of the things that makes Thundercats is the Sword of Omens that Lion-O wields. And, it's actually cool. Mattel actually went up making Lion-O Classics, or Thundercats Classics, and had Lion-O in the line after years and years of trying to get that license. But, don't look too closely there, because if you look at the Sword of Omens and its signature move, which is when Lion-O has his sight beyond sight and opens up the power of the sword, holding it close to his eyes, you get, close-up of the curved on the pommel and the eye there. Well, the Horsemen, totally on their own, not asked for, but again, this is why the Horsemen are just so awesome. They kind of sculpted the sword to have a little bit of a Sword of Omens vibe to it. Of course, the actual blade curves. It's more like a scimitar, but yeah, there's obviously a little Sword of Omens going on there. And that was Chief Carnivus. I think he came out better than I could have hoped. He's still one of my favorite characters. I keep him right on my top of my shelf. I'm so glad we got to do him. And unlike Marzo, we were able to, kind of tone him back and make him more classicized, as opposed to 2000X with all the extra spikes and, all the spiky ears and stuff. And I actually think he's a really good example of how you take a character designed for 2000X, an original character, and then transform him into a Classics character. And a big way I spoke to the Horsemen about this, was to first imagine this character as a vintage figure, how they would look in the 80s, and then update the figure into Classics. That was kind of the reverse engineering creative brief. And, it got us Carnivus, classicized and everything. He's awesome. See you next time.